My name is Bergin. I'm the director of Oberstown Children Detention Campus. I think this is formally our third stakeholder engagement, but I recall one above in one of the hotels in 2014, 2015, when we were kind of beginning this journey. I suppose it's a great opportunity to provide some insight into what's been happening on the campus, particularly over the past 12 months. Just to kickstart, there's about 2-3 slides from my end, and I'm going to work through them. Just, I suppose, to go back on some core issues for us around the campus. We were involved in a process back in 2016, 2017, and we looked at ensuring there was clarity around what our mission, our values, and our vision for Oberstown campus was. And that has continued to sustain us over the past number of years. And there is a focus around providing care within a secure context for young people, and that has its own contradictions, but it is something we've been able to get a good balance of. But we need to ensure appropriate standards are met, and we talk about those as the afternoon goes on. I suppose in 2017, what we had engaged in the process of consultation with some of the stakeholders, staff here and young people, we set out a plan for 2017 to 2020. The current plan is, I suppose, coming to an end, and we'll discuss later on the next steps we are currently undertaking to address what the next number of years will look like. But just to set out, there was 5 objectives identified in 2017. The first one there looks at providing the best possible care for young people, which is the core function of our goals. The second one was to develop our people and our organisation. Those 2 in particular I will address as part of my presentation to yourselves. The next 3, implementing policies, procedures and standards which were consistent with the best model of detention for young people, enhancing our communications and delivering robust governance at all levels, will be spoken to by Ursula. So just to progress a small bit, as I say, I've 2 core slides. The first one here about young people. I suppose what I wanted to do today was to remind people of Oberstown and where we're at. So the profile of young people here at the moment, we have 31 young people on campus this morning, 2 girls and the rest are boys. They range in age from 13 to 18. We've a number that are just touching the 18 and 18 and a half will be an area of discussion with them. I suppose overall, the profile of young people, we have published data over the past few years around challenges with education, challenges with mental health issues, challenges with addiction, and that level of insight hasn't changed. So a lot of these young people have very complex needs. I was doing a piece of work recently, I suppose, trying to understand the pattern of admissions on the campus here. And back in 2015, we had 175 young people through the campus in that year. Year on year, there has been a reduction. So last year, it was 134. And there will be many different thoughts and views around why that is the case. Some may refer to the bail supervision, some may refer to, I suppose, different interventions within the community, but it's clearly evident that the numbers have reduced year on year. I suppose also what has been very interesting for us in looking at those profiles is the average age of young people on admission. In 2015, it was 15 years of age, but since then it has been maintained at 16 years of age. Now that was in contrast to some of the concerns and views we all had back in 2014, 2015, when we were looking at the profile of young people that were in adult prison in Wheatfield at the time. And I think there was 16 or 17 young people at 17 years of age. And the concern was, what would that affect, the numbers affect here? It hasn't proven to materialize the way we all anticipated, but that's a positive piece. I suppose in regards to the young people here, I mentioned with 2 girls, that number varies. For many months, we may have no young ladies here, but we've 1 on remand and 1 on detention. From a detention perspective, just to give you a sense of the profile here, we normally have up to 16 young people, or we could have up to 16 young people on remand. It has reduced now as far as 7 or 8, but there's always a level of uncertainty because of cases that go before the court. It was just to clarify with everybody that young people that come here all go through the court system. And on that basis, there is criminality that these young people have been involved in. From a remand perspective, the courts are considering what the options are to be in relation to charges that young people are facing. And for other young people, a decision has been made and they are serving a sentence. We always have outliers from a sentence perspective. We would have young people that might be here for a month or two. And then we have some outliers that would be for longer terms in regard to years because of the level of the charge there before. But in the main, you're talking between 9 and 10 months, 9 and 12 months in regard to detention. Some of that would be backdated because of the remand period that they have served, but that's a general census we've here. I suppose in regards to the whole routines on the campus, just to set some of this out for yourselves to clarify what goes on. Young people are usually up and about here in the main during non-school time at whatever 9 o'clock. They're in school at 9:45. They attend school until approximately 3:30, and the school is on the campus. In the afternoon, there's a break for an hour or so, and then the campus has organised activities for them. And these activities can go on till 7 o'clock, and they vary from an education to recreation. And they are very important elements for young people around, I suppose, keeping them busy, keeping them active. But there's a lot of other aspects to their routines here. There's young people going in and out of courts. There's placement plan meetings ongoing throughout the week. There are attendances to the nurse on site. The dentist comes in on Tuesday. There's always a number of young people who need to attend there. There's family visits that were ongoing in our visiting suite here. And of course, on most young people, there's phone calls to be made with their families. I suppose behind all that, there will be challenges with particularly young people from time to time. So managing those difficult situations or their uncertainties or how they cope is part and parcel of what we do. So I just want to give you a sense. We'll discuss later on how COVID has impacted on that, but I was just to give a sense of the normal routines that are on campus. Saturdays and Sundays a bit quieter. Sleep in. During the summer, there's a sleep in 9, 10, 11 o'clock, trying to get them out of bed at 12. But we have activities. So for the summer here, we have an activity program starting at 1:30 every afternoon, and it goes on till 6:30. And again, that's important for young people to show interest, keep them going. But as I say, I'll just move on to, I suppose, the key hop there, and the CEHOP, I suppose, has become part and parcel of our vocabulary here. And for those that aren't familiar with us, some call it key hop, some call it C-hop. But key hop is what we call it. And that ultimately has been developed from the legislation that's in place under the 2001 Act, which talks about the responsibility of the campus to provide care, education, to address health, offending behaviour, and prepare people for leaving. And we have a structure and a format that young people have bought into, staff use, and that has kept us all safe since, I say, 2015, around ensuring we deliver what we're supposed to deliver. So just to give you a sense of those 5 components. So when we talk about care, we talk about primary care, making sure that young people's basic needs are met. And sometimes for young people coming in here, they have challenge around clothes, hygiene. There's a fearfulness around being here. And our direct contact with young people coming in here from the outset is very, very important. I suppose that care evolves to relationships that young people develop here with staff. And it does, particularly when it comes to the period of time when young people are in detention, they form attachments and understanding with staff, and that care also evolves. And the challenges that we can, I suppose, place young people under in relation to getting the best out of them evolves as well. So the relationship between the care staff that are here and the young people is core to evolving them over that period of time to get the best out of them. From an education perspective, the campus has a school on campus. The Dublin-Dunleary ETB provides the educational component on site. There's approximately 24 teachers employed by DDLETV. And ultimately, it's a mixture of primary and secondary school. It has a primary school day, and primary school year, which goes on further till June, which we're all very happy about. But it covers from junior cert, even cert, QQIs, down to very basic education literacy programs. So there's a whole range, because the needs of young people that have been identified coming in are also complex and wide ranging. So there's a core requirement for the school here to be able to adjust to the needs of young people. And again, like I spoke from a care perspective, try to get the best out of young people. That's an evolving piece. I suppose we look at education as continuing outside of the school hours as well. So that's why we have looked at our programs in the afternoons and in the evenings as being crucial. Just, I suppose, to make reference to young people, I think there's 12 young people this year start their, due to their junior cert. We've now have got junior cert results through a different process, and we would have had one young person that had or was intending to sit his leaving cert, and again, different process for assessing his education attainment. But that's the level of attainment that was the school were addressing this year. From a health and welfare perspective, there's two elements of this. One, we have a medical team on site here. There's 4 nurses here, and ultimately they're responsible from a health perspective to make sure that from admissions to discharge, that the health needs of young people are addressed. And that's a very, very important element for us, because for many young people, they haven't been looking after themselves, no different than young people not attending education when they're outside of the campus. So from a health perspective, there's an opportunity to, I suppose, support young people, whether it's eating healthier or looking after themselves. As I say, even the dentist gets a good cue here, which is an interesting development for us. But also from a health perspective, there's the therapeutic side, which is mental health, the psychological services. So they're provided on site by the ACTS team and by Forensic Mental Health Services. The ACTS team through TUSTA are based here. There's approximately 4 or 5 members of the team here now, and they cover from drug addiction, speech and language, psychology, social work. And from the Forensic Mental Health Service, which is provided by Professor Harry Kennedy, there is an element of psychology and the CAM services on site. And again, that helps us a lot in regard to addressing particular concerns that young people display. So all of that approach and that integrated approach between the health and welfare element is covered off on by those core professionals, but it's supported on an ongoing basis by our care staff to ensure what's identified is delivered outside of the clinical hours and throughout the rest of the day and weekends. So there's very much a joined up approach on that. The last 2 areas, just in relation to the KEHOP, the offending behaviour, that's been an evolving process for us around addressing offending behaviour. We'll reference later on, but I'll take the opportunity now just to identify, we looked at 2019 around the charges of young people coming on the campus. And of 115 young people, there were 600 charges that young people were before the courts in relation to. And there was quite a wide range of charges in relation to whether it is a single event or multiple events. I suppose what we looked at, trying to tailor our approach around offending behaviour, we started looking at working more in-depthly with the probation service, but also our young persons program manager who come to being, I suppose, about 2 years ago, has really provided a baseline for specific programs with young people. And what you have is young people looking to attend these, looking to participate in these, and that's been a real eye-opener for us. We have brought in place outcome stars, and that has been it's a process of, I suppose, assessing particular areas of where young people are at, undertaking some work then, and then looking later on with them around what they've achieved in regard to internalising some of the learnings and changing behaviours. It's one of the core issues why young people are here, but it is part and parcel also of the work that young people do on a weekly basis with us. The last point there, which is the core issue for us around the KEHOP, is about from preparing for leaving. And we have adopted the view that once young people arrive, that's when we need to start preparing for leaving. And we have developed the framework of a placement planning meeting, which initially would have been a difficult process to get traction, but now is very much part of our daily and weekly routine. When you have young people talking about their placement plan meetings, bringing their parents, making sure the guard is there, the probation service is there, they want their voices heard around what they'd like to do. Why can't I have this course? I want to address my offending behaviour. What's the possibility of a job? All of those are key questions that we would experience at placement plan meetings, and the expectation from young people and their families that some of these issues are addressed. So it has become, I suppose, a catalyst for us around driving process of ensuring that we have, to the best of our ability, prepared young people for leaving. We don't have controls of all elements. We can't provide accommodation. We don't provide accommodation. Education is provided in the community, but what we're trying to do is open doors, create links, and a lot of you who are involved in here with us over a number of years play an active role in trying to assist in providing those foundations for young people for when they move on out of here. So the key up model for us is working, has worked, and I think our young people have substantially bought into it. So that's just to give you a sense of what life is like here at the moment and what's going on. I'm just going to move on to the next objective, which was around developing our people and our organisation. And again, Oberstown has travelled a substantial journey over the past number of years. I think in 2014, there was 180 staff working here. There's 280 staff here now, and an awful lot of more external people through your organisations coming on site, helping us out. I just referenced at the beginning there 3 posts currently that have evolved over the past 12 months. We've had a change of training officer who's been playing a substantial role for us in recent developments. We have a chief people's officer. We've looked at the whole development of our HR function in the broader context and developing into our strategy. And Aoife has joined us recently. We also have had a change of communications officer. You've met Matthew. He introduced us to this whole process today. And we've looked at driving those posts in regard to change and others across the campus. I mentioned the young person's program manager. Again, that's been substantial. So I suppose from a staffing perspective, we have looked at particular areas to develop potential within the campus, to manage scenarios for ourselves, but also that will give added value to, I suppose, delivering the care and supporting the staff in what we're trying to achieve here. Training and continuous professional development for our staff has been a core part of what we've been looking at the past couple of years. 2019, I was going back over the presentation we did last year. There didn't seem to be a reference to it, but it was a substantial piece for us where we had a joint approach with DCU, and the middle managers here is the lead project. It was around skilling up all of our middle managers right across the campus around working together, the coaching approach, a level of leadership working together, and that has been a substantial piece of work, and we continue to build on that over the next couple of years. It has made a significant difference in the confidence, the value that the middle management offer here to the campus. And that's very evident, I suppose, when we look around how stable the campus is, the work that's been done, and the focus around supporting staff to deliver what they need to deliver. So that was one element. We are looking, and we'll talk later on about what's coming up in the future, but developing the staff here has been, I suppose, a substantial piece for us. We've been looking at supervision. We've been looking at changing supervision to a whole coaching model, and that has grown from the lead project, and we have more to, I suppose, to share on that over the next couple of weeks and months. In March, prior to COVID-19, we were all getting our tuxedos ready for a presentation of some Keep Well Mark awards. We've been nominated for 3 awards through IBEC. I think that's now been deferred until August, the end of August. But I suppose what came out of that was the substantial work that's been done by HR, by Cara Driscoll, and by managers here around looking at the whole area of the well-being of staff, whether it's mental health, physical health. And I suppose what we found is the level of investment and attention that we gave this has reaped massive rewards for us, and has helped us in regards to dealing with challenging situations, dealing with complex situations. I think one of the benefits we have found in all the work that we've done over the past few years is that it has helped us with COVID-19, and I suppose measures that we're able to put in place to support staff and how they deliver and work within the environment, considering all the extra stresses that took place. So I suppose, generally speaking, from our organisation, it has grown a lot over the past couple of years, not only in size, but also in confidence, and also in how it delivers, I suppose, the values, active values, but also the vision and the mission. So there is a sense that Oberstown, I suppose, is meeting the requirements now and delivering what we need to deliver, and a lot of that is down to the staff and how we've evolved the organisation. I'm going to go on to the next PowerPoint and ask Ursula if she'd take it up, please, and I'll come back to you later on other issues.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Pat. So, you know, I think we've heard about the extensive progress that's been taking place around both the priority 1 and 2 under our strategic plan, critical, of course, the care of young people at its heart. And what we've been trying to do under the 3rd heading is to ensure that we have a really robust, progressive policy base in place to ensure that the progress that's been made is embedded in the organisation at every level and is future-proofed in a way that's independent of the people who are here, if you like, and the day-to-day, that it actually sets out a clear framework for the standards to be met, and to which we are all, and those who follow us, will be held accountable. And over the last number of years, we have been evolving that policy base, both through the process of merging the schools back in 2016, and also further iterations of it over the last number of years. But we wanted to get to a point where we had, if you like, a definitive framework for Oberstown to complement and incorporate the key hub framework that Pat's been talking about, and to again set us apart as a facility, a detention centre that really has children and children's rights at its heart. So as part of that process, we went and researched all of the international children's rights standards, all the expectations and other quality frameworks that are out there. And we developed what we're describing as a children's rights framework, which has 3 different components to it. It will present and incorporate a set of 12 rules, the Oberstown rules, which the Board of Management has the authority to adopt with the consent of the Minister under the Children Act. These are a clear, concise statement of the rights to which young people are entitled, the standards that apply to all areas of their care and their lives here on campus, from care, education, health and so on, but also including things like restrictive practices, behaviour management, their engagement in relationships with their families, and so on. So they are a really important, simple statement of entitlements and rules. They are supplemented by a policy that flows from each rule. So we have a new set of policies that consolidates all of that progress and sets out the detailed standards and treatment to which young people are entitled while they're here. And it also, in a complementary way, frames this as a clear expectation on staff and management, and then the level of accountability that applies to the board on behalf of the Minister. The 3rd element of it, which is in development, are the procedures that will be, if you like, the manual by which all of this is delivered. And there's a process underway in consulting with staff, generating buy-in and support and engagement with staff to present at the end of the year a set of procedures that the Director's Office will approve, that will be that manual, if you like, for implementing the Children's Rights Framework. This is a work in progress, and we're expecting that to evolve and come to a conclusion by the end of the year. So this is a really important marker in our development and our attempt to set ourselves up as an international leading facility of its kind with children's rights embedded right through the organisation. The other areas, of course, are critically important, notwithstanding the centrality of children's rights to what we do in Oberstown. Clearly, there's a huge organisation that surrounds it, or that's peripheral to it, and that's that is essential to the safe and secure operation of Oberstown. And so we have built in a process across the board of continuous improvement and evaluation, really looking to inquire, and I'll come back to this under research, but to make sure that we are learning all the time. You see that from the elements of staff improvement as well. And we have had a specific piece of work commissioned to consult with families so that we're involving and continuing to learn from families about their experiences and how we can do better. And Lahela have helped us with that. And then the final piece is related, as I say, is the compliance piece. It's really important that we have, of course, all the corporate policies in place, from really the best in class HR employee handbook. All of those policies have been reviewed with the support of IBEC and will be coming back before the board in the next couple of months. And things like our health and safety or GDPR policies, all of that you'd expect with a corporate entity like this. So a huge amount of work in that area. And then in Objective 4, we have made it a very clear part of our mission over the last 3 or 4 years to enhance our communications internally and externally. It's a hugely important part of change and of engaging with staff and other stakeholders, and this is obviously an important part of that process as well. And just a few things to bring to your attention. We've, as you know, got very good data. I think uniquely, really, in the youth justice system, we've prioritised and published data regularly over the last number of years. We've had in-depth analysis of the characteristics of young people that we've published 3 years in a row now, where we really try to help the public and others to understand the extent of the circumstances of young people who come here and the impact of this on their lives. So it's an important part of that process of engagement. We have been looking at this again, and I suppose there are 2 areas of priority for us in terms of using our data, but also really trying to map and track our progress. We've committed to a longitudinal study that will follow on and in parallel with the children's rights framework. We'll look at engaging with children and young people around their experiences of their rights in Oberstown, linked to outcomes and linked to their sense of how their needs are being met, as well as a more, if you like, an objective assessment of that practice. So that's about to start in the coming months. And we are well into a study of remand, the experience of remand, both in terms of the data and, again, the experience of young people themselves of being on remand here, but also the remand process through the courts, looking to see how we can improve that process from the different perspectives. We have made it clear, and it's part of the children's rights framework, the participation of young people in decision making is key, both at individual level in their placement planning meetings, in their units, but also at campus level with the campus council. And our advocacy officer has been doing fantastic work to embed all of that way of thinking, not just working with young people themselves, but actually supporting the staff to continue to engage and listen to and respond to young people and include them in the decision-making processes. So that's been really, really positive development over the last while. And it's helped the board to finally move to a position where it has now a clear protocol in place for engaging with young people, both directly and indirectly. We're really excited about that and also about the importance of it, that we have direct views and voices of young people at our board. Part of the work that Ganya has been doing has been to develop the young person's handbook, and we believe that's been making really good progress, and we'll see that coming to fruition very soon. And then just to flag 2 really important developments. Internally, we have a great system through a company called Work Vivo that enables, through a social media platform, dynamic engagement between staff at all levels, sharing of social and professional information, which is working really well. And we have our annual report from 2019, which we'll be launching on Wednesday. That was laid before the Houses of Oireachtas and presented to Ministers of Home at the end of June. So we're pleased to see that come to fruition. And then finally, the objective 5, I've mentioned accountability before, and the whole area of governance is hugely important, both with regard to the quality of the work that we do, but also more generally in terms of Oberstown's role in adhering to the highest standards of governance. Particularly, we're bound by the Code of Practice for the Governance of State Bodies, which we've been working really hard to implement. It's a very challenging set of standards, but we're making excellent progress throughout the organisation, particularly with the work of the board. You'll be aware we appointed, the Minister appointed a new Board of Management last summer. We had orientation in September, and so we've almost a year underneath our belts now, and we've really, I think, been engaged in a very transformative agenda of governance and compliance in that time. Through predominantly the governance and the audit and risk committee, but of course the work of the entire board feeds into all of that. So we're seeing a step change along with the rest of the public sector, I think it's fair to say, with the extent of engagement and responsibility on the board and Oberstown generally for a whole range of areas of responsibility, and I've just listed some of those which you can see there. Again, that sort of professionalising of everything that we do is really, really important. So that's good, I think, good to see, and a good marker of where as an organisation we're really maturing and continuing to professionalise. What we wanted to do is to give you a flavour of the kind of challenges and activity that has been ongoing in the last number of months under COVID-19. So I'm going to hand back to Pat, who's going to talk you through the things that have been underway there.
If we're all in a room, we'll probably be nodding around the challenges that COVID-19 has had for all of us in many different ways, whether it is personally, within our families, or within our professional lives. So we felt it was important maybe to set out, or maybe just to put down some markers around how life has been over the past 5-6 months with us here on the campus to give some insight. So I suppose the first statement, and I like making it every week to the staff and to the board, which is we have and continue to be COVID-free. We've had a few delicate moments, but the campus has been free, and that's been a real effort on behalf of staff and young people over the past 5 months. I suppose just to set out, when there was reference to the coronavirus back in February, I suppose none of us knew what was ahead of us, but Ursula and myself were reflecting this morning on the journey, and there was a point that we spoke about that I will always recall, which was talk about the Garda stations, putting staff out around on the beat more, Templemore closing, the army being brought out on the streets, possibility of unrest. That seems like a long time ago, but at that time there was an awful lot of anxiety around what we were facing and what we were going to have to do. So I'll just give you a sense of where Oberstown was at. I suppose we had learned a lot of lessons over the past number of years. So when there was reference to COVID-19, we actually put in place straight away our emergency planning process. And at the time we kind of went, is this an overreaction? But it wasn't. It was ideal, it was specific, it focused our minds around what we needed to do. And we had a vehicle in place to be able to respond to issues as they arose. There was a lot of communication with staff. There was a whole process of looking at how we're going to manage, how do we keep this out. So I suppose there was a level of independence, of being informed by what was going on nationally around what we can do and should do. I suppose just to give a sense, I suppose some of the immediate things when, the famous press conference that the Taoiseach issued around decisions that the country was shutting down, we very quickly were in a process, we renegotiated rosters with staff here to, I suppose, reduce the possibility of cross-contamination. Staff bought into it. It was a real challenge for every function across the campus. So I mentioned 285 staff. There were staff that were told to pack their bags and go home. that you'd be working from home tomorrow. We never had home working. For some people, they didn't have computers to work at home, but within a week we were up and running. We were getting systems in place. For young people, straight away we realized that we had two risks on this campus. One was COVID-19, and the other one was the behavior of young people if we couldn't manage it. So we actually engaged immediately with young people. We explained what was going on in the context of COVID-19. We looked at what measures we were going to put in place. We listened to their anxieties. But the reality is, for a lot of young people, they felt safer here than they did outside. And I mean, they were long turning around telling me, well, you're the ones that are going to be in COVID-19 in here, so stay away from me, Mr. Bergin. But there was a sense of young people's full cooperation with us, and we were worried how young people would respond. And they responded really, really positively to us. They responded positively to the measures we put in place. So you think about it, all of a sudden our visits were stopped. And the impact for staff around being able to communicate to young people about what was going to happen. So we got WhatsApp running very quickly. We were able to expand that then to Zoom, into video conferencing. So we put measures in place very quickly to be able to link in with families. And for some families, they saw this as a real benefit. And the benefit was, I couldn't get up that often to Dublin from different parts of the country. Now I can ring in every second week, or every second day, sorry, and see my son, or my son can see his bedroom, or you can see the dog. So there was a real benefit in many ways to some of those measures that had to be brought in quite rapidly. I suppose the other measure we had to consider very quickly was that we had approximately 38 young people on campus. So we had just been through a process of verification around the ability to be able to use some elements within the legislation, temporary release, permitted absences, as a way of reintegrating young people back into the campus. So we undertook, I suppose, a very quick assessment of where young people were at. We identified that over a period of time, up to 12 young people with some supports would be able to go home. Now, what we were mindful of is that the supports at communities didn't exist, because for a lot of organisations, they had shut down. So what we did was we developed our own support mechanism. And to be honest, it has really, really shown us what's possible. I keep talking about 12 young people that were on permitted absence, and my young person's program manager will tell me, Pat, that's closer to 20 when you look at what happened over the period of time, over the months, because we had young people that would have, their sentence would have ended at home and they moved on, and there was others we added to that list. But we came up with a structure of working with parents. We had one or two identified people here who'd link in with young people, and we tolerated some risks that possibly we mightn't have tolerated before, and it really proved positive for young people. I suppose the measure I would put out is that where young people themselves continue with education at home, parents were looking for schoolwork to be posted home to them, where they would insist on the young people do homework and prepare for junior certs, but it didn't evolve into that. So there was a real benefit, and something that we're going to be looking at as an ongoing piece around how do we look at supporting young people at home, or how do we ask yourselves to help support young people at home or in their communities, because it does work. I think overall, of possibly the 18 to 20, 3 returned because they couldn't manage, and 1 voluntarily came back because he himself requested the option to come back because he felt he couldn't cope, which is a massive, massive, I suppose, indicator of what's possible, but also, I suppose, a big thanks to the staff that were involved in supporting them weekends, late into the night and early mornings. So that really worked well. The other piece that we were delighted that moved on very rapidly for us was the whole video conferencing for courts. I think the back end of last year and early this year, we had 1, maybe 2 courts in the country that had made arrangements for video conferencing through ourselves here due to distance for young people, and they're going to be remanded on an ongoing basis for a period of time. However, what COVID-19 did was it provided the opportunity for an awful lot more video conferencing to courts, where young people weren't put into cars, brought to courts, remanded and sent back. And the knock-on benefit of that was threefold. One, I suppose there was a sense that for young people, they weren't being dragged around the country. Two, there was also a level of managing situations with regards to drugs and stuff coming back here. That stopped. It didn't happen. And I suppose the third part of the whole video conferencing element for young people was what they had felt was, you know, I can go to court and get it done. I can continue with my routine here. So there was an element of, I suppose, very obvious benefits. There was I suppose, challenges in getting that up and running as quickly as it did. And, you know, we have to thank the court services and solicitors and families for allowing that to happen. But it was a real, real benefit. And it's something that we want to continue, and a platform has been established now involving the courts, Department of Justice, the Gardaí, the Prison Service, and ourselves to see how that can continue, because I think it's a win-win for everybody in that context. I suppose the other piece that I suppose we had to do here, we were worried about it, but it worked out well. The limitations of movement around the campus had to kick into being. So, you know, with a lot of hand washing going on, with a lot of coughing etiquette information to put out there. But what we did was we maintained core groups. So in units where you had staff working, you had 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 young people living, that became the family unit rather than mixing units. And that proved beneficial in many ways in the context that relationships grew, people were working together, living together, playing together, and that has worked out well for us. It is something that was temporary. We see the benefit of if COVID-19 can be managed. There is a cross-fertilization of young people playing with each other in the context of games and activities and looking at school in September. But it was managed well. And I think the measure of that is we haven't had any negative implications because of it. I think the buy-in from young people, the support from the staff, the routines, thinking outside the box in regard to activities, education, recreation, all of those were key functions for us to make sure that this worked. And it did work, and it worked well. The single separation numbers stayed down. The level of physical interventions stayed down. The difficulties on the campus were minimal. So all of those, considering the real challenges that many of us had living at home in communities, did not extend itself into here. And I think that's because of the work that was done to be ahead of the posse, to make sure that we were proactive around all issues. I think if we had sat back, we would have had a lot of challenges, and I think we would have been mopping up a lot of issues. But I think, I just give you an example. Every weekday at 11:30, there was a full emergency planning meeting involving all management across the campus, and that's up to 20 people looking at all issues to make sure that we stay ahead of everything. Our involvement reporting into the department, engaging with other entities that were still operating was important, and that's what kept it going. So I think it's a credit to everybody involved, both the young people and the staff, that this has worked and it's worked well. I suppose I have a point here about the living with the new arrangements. I suppose my comment on that was that there was a concept of people adapting, but there was also another element of us where young people would say, well, this is kind of normal for us. The environment here in regard to, you know, you are planning visits coming down. They're a different modem. We are going in and out to courts, different modem, but this is our life in here. So there was an element of building that, but there was challenges for young people. They missed their families. Families missed having contact with them as well, the physical contact. There was some limitations around off-campus visit or excursions did not happen. We were able to continue doing the shopping. We were able to continue some of the normal stuff that young people built into their routines here. So from that perspective, it was good. I suppose the new norm going forward is going to be a challenge for us. So I suppose some of the things we've been looking at and making reference to the video conferencing for courts, we'd like that bedded in to the normal process here, so that where, you know, it's appropriate for young people to go to court and it's necessary, absolutely, but the choice of it being here. So there's been some work done around the Prison Act 2007 and the capacity when Section 33 and 34 for young people that are here to have video conferencing as part of the option in relation to dealing with matters before the courts. I suppose from the family visit perspective, family visits are back happening, but they are screened. There's still a risk that we have to manage in relation to people coming in here. So we have some screened visits here, and they are welcomed by family and by young people, but there still continues to be a big emphasis on the virtual visits. And I think there always will be, and we have evolved that with the prison service around from an IT perspective to a new level. So where originally it was on a phone and a FaceTime, it has grown in stature and resources and ability. So that's been good. The third piece, and while I referenced the permitted absence and going out of here, that's something I really want to maintain as part and parcel of the routine here. So rather than a young person waiting until their release date, the concept of looking at when we can support them out of the campus here, continue to have them on a license, either a temporary release or permitted absence, but also to allow, I suppose, yourselves to support us within the community setting about how we can support those young people. I referenced earlier on about education, skills training, practical things that people can learn here is what they want to know. So when they go out of here, they can pick up work, they have an alternative, rather than hanging around with their friends and getting into trouble. So there's a couple of issues there. Education, we've had a real challenge with education on the campus. The decision to close the school by government challenged us in relation to how we deliver education. I suppose the uncertainty around the junior cert, leaving cert. I mean, many people experienced that. I suppose we would have held a view that education could have continued here because of the nature of the location, of the nature of the classrooms and the structure here and the numbers of children. We all tried, both the school and ourselves, different ways to support and facilitate that. It's something I think we all recognise could be done better and different, and I suppose that's what we're all focused on now in September, how we can achieve that, and we think it may be differently and outside the box. But that's something that I think we have a big focus on. And I think with different partners that we have involved in this, there's an expectation at this stage that on the 27th or 28th of August, school will resume here. Young people missed school. They like school here. They like the interaction with the teachers. They like the capacity to go and do a bit of work. And they like showing and, I suppose, demonstrating to their families or their parents or their carers what they've achieved. So we can't underestimate that. I suppose what a lot of young people keep talking about is whether it is the barista here or whether it is the fitness training or whether it is their junior cert or whether it is the practical piece they do, they want to be in a position to show that they have ability. And as I say, within the context of education and the structure here, we have some new developments taking place here. One of the lessons we learned around that is the skills. So we've opened the garage here today. I think it's today or yesterday. Today's Monday, yeah, today. We opened it today. Yeah, every day moves into the next. But that's something from the young person's perspective they can see that is going to help. And I think just, some of the lads will take into that and look at how they can use it. So that'd be the key lessons. I think from the board's perspective, Ursula, I mean, you've seen it through a different lens as well.
Yeah, and I think like everybody else who's involved in governance of organisations, we ought to also adapt and evolve. We went online virtually for our meetings immediately in March, and have met online through this platform since then. We also, rather than even take the foot off the pedal at all, we met more often. We had interim meetings between every board meeting just to check in, just to make sure we were up to speed and were providing the level of scrutiny and also the level of support that was necessary. So I think that's worked really well for us. And obviously the platform allows many of us who travel up and down to Oberstown and for meetings to do that maybe a little bit easier. And so we've had complete and full attendance at all of those sessions. So it's been fantastic engagement, and thank you to my fellow board members for all of that support. We did that for a couple of reasons. I mentioned the level of support, but also to provide a level of continued accountability to the Minister and to the public for what happens here. We were acutely aware that notwithstanding the challenges, that there were, of course, risks that when the gaze, the normal gaze of scrutiny is diluted, or if it's lessened, that can create risks that we might have to explain and find it difficult to explain in months and years to come. So we were really keen to maintain a level of oversight that we're used to here, and that was a priority for the board. And as an associated principle, we made a very clear statement at the beginning of the crisis that we expected policy and standards to apply as normal. There was, in our view, and we communicated this out to management and staff, to be no deviation from policy or no dilution of policy. And so we provided, I think, a level of clarity around that was important for everyone. We also, of course, had levels of regular, if altered, sort of forms of reporting to the department, to HICWA and to others. So there was no let up in the level of information being provided, the level of oversight was being provided. So I think that's an important statement to be able to make. And then just in conclusion, really, to point to sort of future challenges and priorities. Pat mentioned at the beginning, we're in the process of renewing and consulting on our next strategic plan. We mentioned that to you last time we met. That process, an extensive process of engagement with staff in particular, is ongoing, and we'll be looking to finalise that over the coming weeks and months. We don't see any great shift in direction. We think we've been really clear about the priorities, and we remain to see those continuing. There will of course be nuances and changes and shifts in method perhaps, or in focus as we go through the next number of years. COVID, of course, brings constant change for all of us, and we're really conscious, first of all, that it's a continuing risk. We have to stay vigilant for all of the reasons that we are all familiar with, but it also presents an opportunity for greater agility, for reflexiveness, for change as a new construct. It's everywhere all the time. It has always been a part of the Oberstown story, and I think it is creating a momentum and an opportunity for continuing to reassess what we do and how we do it, and looking to make sure we're making the most of the different mechanisms and ways of working that have kind of presented themselves to us. I think that's important. Of course, we said goodbye to Catherine Zappone as our minister when government changed, and I want to pay tribute to Minister Zappone for all of the support that she's provided with her officials throughout certainly our time. My term as chair, my first term as chair, coincided with Catherine's appointment, and it was very important and strong working relationship. So we want to thank the Minister for all of her support, and we waited patiently, obviously, with the news of not only whether our own department would survive, but also, of course, once that was secured, we're very pleased about that the appointment of the next Minister for Children, and Roderick O'Gorman, has been appointed, as you all know, as Minister for Children, Disability, Equality and Integration. That's a new government structure, a new department structure. We're obviously really pleased and know the value of being situated in a Department of Children. It has really mattered from a directional point of view that we engage with and are supported by and are held accountable by officials who are so focused on the needs and rights of children like we are. So we don't underestimate at all how important that is. There are, of course, new arrangements, the Minister for Justice, and a lot of reform happening in the justice sector, new criminal justice strategy, and we fed into the youth justice strategy process. The youth justice part of the Department of Children having moved now to the Department of Justice. So there is still quite an amount of, I suppose, uncertainty around the wider youth justice framework and where the strategy will ultimately sit. Nonetheless, we made a submission to the youth justice strategy process, which addressed a number of priorities. We obviously referenced the children's rights framework, and I flagged that as our key priority over the next number of years to really embed that in our ways of working here. We flagged the importance of integrated learning and development. We, as you all know, have a school on campus that does excellent work through the support, with the support of the Education Training Board. We also have associated vocational and other training and education opportunities, if you like, on the residential part of the campus, and we're really keen to make sure that this is an integrated process of learning and development for young people over the next period of time. And just relating to COVID, I think it's important that we set out the expectation on our part, certainly our desire to see the school remain open if clearly public health allows. We're looking for a more nuanced approach. I think government would certainly see that as part of its its future approach to schools, learning the lessons of the last number of months. I mentioned the longitudinal study, the focus on outcomes as a key priority. And two final points I make. One is around the long-term campus plan. It took so long to get the building right. It's hard to believe that we actually need to continue to keep working on the actual physical infrastructure of the campus more generally, but also the long-term future of Oberstown and where it fits in the wider sector, the criminal justice sector, in the youth child sector. We know emerging adults, and notwithstanding that the average age is still remaining 16, we know that links with the prison system are critically important. We know that the group of emerging adults have needs that are not dissimilar to those young people who are here. So we're keen to be part of that discussion and dialogue in the wider criminal justice system, as well as in the wider child protection and child welfare system. So I think one other final thing I would say around the Oberstown position is a really welcome reaffirmation of our ethos, which, as I mentioned, was reflected in our continuing positioning in the Department of Children, and interestingly also I think reinforced by a Supreme Court judgment in the last number of months, which highlighted the importance of the distinctive features of children and why children and young people are different from adults, and it, in many ways, reinforced a lot of what we've been saying, a lot of what the research evidence, what international and other jurisdictions are saying about the need to really stay attuned to a particular way of supporting young people given their differences and their distinguishing characteristics from adults. So we're really happy that has been reinforced in the legal system in that way as well.